St. Catharines, Mayor Matt Cisco here. Welcome to another episode of Talk STC. It's been a busy March so far, fantastic month. I had the opportunity to be at the Empty Bowls event to raise funds for Bethlehem Housing and Support Services. Fantastic, not a soup guy, ate a lot of soup, but a really good time and a fantastic opportunity to raise funds for Bethlehem Housing and Support Services. They do amazing work in our community. They're going to be a partner of ours for a very long time, so that was exciting. We also had the opportunity to celebrate International Women's Day at an event with the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce, and we got a chance to celebrate Dr. Tapo, one of my favorite people, the Executive Director for Future Black Female, as well as celebrating other women in our community, and that is always an important part of the first quarter of the year, so I'm glad we had the opportunity to do that. Also, some very exciting announcements for St. Catharines. The big one, obviously, on the heels of a wonderful funding announcement from the federal government, the provincial government, and Minister Calandra were in town to give us a check for $2.3 million. Those dollars are going to go towards infrastructure, tackling the infrastructure deficit, some of the obstacles we know we face when it comes to getting housing built. And I appreciate the work of the provincial government to be good partners with us to ensure that we can meet the joint goal that we have, along with all levels of government, of getting housing built in the city of St. Catharines. We also had the groundbreaking for Tennis Canada and their new community park indoor tennis facility that is being built in Meriton to allow tennis enthusiasts in our community to enjoy the sport they love so much. Now, today's show is a little bit different. Today, we're going to be focusing just on one aspect, and specifically the shipping industry, the Great Lakes, and the things we do as we get ready for the Welland Canal to open for business. We always look forward to that in the month of March, and we are excited to see that coming up. So today, first up, we're going to be talking to Ted Kirkpatrick. He's the Director of Business Development and Government Relations for Ontario Shipyards, to discuss all of the things that are going on in the marine industry in St. Catharines and Ontario. And as we get ready to embark on that new shipping season with the opening of Welland Canal, we are also then going to be chatting with staff from Algoma Central Corporation, who are celebrating 125 years of business. But we will start today, as I said, with Ted Kirkpatrick, Director of Business Development and Government Relations at Ontario Shipyards. Ted, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, over the last 5 years, you and your commercial team have been developing and implementing a strategy to bring Ontario shipyards into the national shipbuilding strategy and return the Ontario shipbuilding industry to a place of national prominence. But before you were at Ontario Shipyards, and I should say Ontario Shipyards, formerly Heddle Marine, now Ontario Shipyards, sort of like Twitter and X. We're still trying to figure out how to manage that transition. You sailed the Great Lakes, the East Coast, and the Canadian Arctic with a Canadian-flagged commercial fleet as a navigation officer and a tug captain.
That's correct.
What is involved in being a tug captain?
It's a combination of accruing sea time,
Yep.
and then there's Transport Canada exams and tests that you have to go through. There's two paths. You can either go to something like Georgian College that has an approved navigation training program,
Okay.
And then you do a mix of in-class and then onboard placement. Or you could do it the way that I did it, was just you get a job as a deckhand, you amass sea time, and then you write the exams that Transport Canada has.
So would I be correct in assuming that you probably feel way more comfortable on the water than you do on land?
I do. I know. I do. I'm better navigating on water than I am in my truck.
All right. That's. I'm not going to lie. Tug captain, you are probably the most interesting person I've had on this show so far in a year and a half.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we dive into the things, I want to talk about the path a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, joking aside, sailing must have been a part of your life before you got into all of these roles.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my family's always been in the marine industry.
Okay.
My dad worked for a company called Federal Marine Terminals, which is a subsidiary of FedNav, which is actually one of Canada's largest shipping companies.
Okay.
They own mainly foreign flag vessels.
Yep.
Some Canadian flag vessels, but not a lot. And their subsidiary FMT also owns a lot of ports. So on the Welland Canal, they used to have they had a property there that they managed. Mm-hmm. They had a property in Port of Hamilton, Toronto, Chicago, all up and down the eastern seaboard of the Canada and the United States. So I've always been in the marine industry. My first job actually out of high school was for McKeel Marine, chipping and painting tugs in Hamilton Harbor. So I've always been in and around that business, and as I went through life, it just made sense to me that I kind of pursue a career in the marine sector.
That's fantastic. So I say this as a Navy brat, like growing up around the water a lot. It seems once it's in someone's blood, like they don't want to let it go.
It's hard to let it go.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Ontario shipyards now previously Heddle shipyards. Talk a little bit about the history of Heddle in St. Catharines.
It's a really interesting history. So it was founded in 1987 by Rick Heddle, literally with a welding machine on the back of a pickup truck in Hamilton Harbor. Started as an alongside repair company doing work for the tugs and small vessels that worked in Hamilton Harbor. Over the course of the next kind of 20, 25 years, Rick Heddle built it up. He built his own dry docks and started creating a much bigger operation. In 2016, Heddle purchased the Thunder Bay shipyard, and then in 2017, we signed a long-term lease for the Port Weller dry docks here in St. Catharines. Those two events, 2016, 2017, that was really the catalyst for the growth that kind of we're experiencing now and where we've come this last 5 years, because it allowed us to access a much bigger market in terms of the Great Lakes Lakers, the larger vessels, and as well and equally, if not more important, the vessels of the Canadian Coast Guard and the Canadian Navy.
Yeah, and I will say, like, that trajectory of the growth of your company has been kind of crazy over the last couple of years. Like, you've really come on the scene and made an impact. You've rebranded now to be Ontario Shipyards. What brought about the change?
There was a couple of things with that. I think that we really wanted to acknowledge that we are a pan-Ontario company. We have 3 facilities. St. Catharines, Hamilton, Thunder Bay. We employ between 250 and 350 people across the province. And a lot of the work that we do is facilitated by subcontractors and material suppliers and things like that. Ontario being essentially the industrial heartland of Canada, especially kind of the Golden Horseshoe region, our economic impact is quite broad and stretches kind of all corners of the province and Canada as well, but predominantly in Ontario. So we wanted to reflect that. And we also wanted to acknowledge that over the last couple of years, the provincial government has been increasingly supporting what we're trying to do in terms of bringing shipbuilding back to Ontario. And recent events have really shown, like the development of the Ontario Marine Strategy that happened last year. Things like that have really shown that Ontario as a province is jumping in with both feet to support bringing shipbuilding back to Ontario. And so we wanted our name to reflect that.
Pretty complex project, vessel life extension that's going to be happening in Port Weller, dry docks in St. Catharines. And part of that project was being funded through the Ontario government's, I'm going to get this right, Advanced Manufacturing and Innovation Competitiveness stream of its Regional Development Program. So what does that investment mean for the dry docks? How are you putting the money to work?
Yeah, so it's a really neat project. So it's in reference to the Canadian Coast Guard Terry Fox Vessel Life Extension Project, which we won, and the vessel will be showing up in early April. As part of that, these types of vessel life extension projects, they've never really been done before. It's a challenge that the Canadian Coast Guard has posed to industry. They basically said, we have a vessel, we need this done to it. It's never been done before, figure it out. And so it's both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge for us to figure out how we're going to do it. But the output of that is essentially a net new process or a proprietary technology or method of doing something that's incredibly complex. So the money that or the support that we've got through the provincial government is going towards developing these types of new processes that are outside the bounds of what we would normally do kind of on a day-to-day basis. So for the Terry Fox, we're replacing the main engines. This vessel is not designed to have an 80-foot hole cut in the side of it and have all its engines, but that's what we have to do. And so the output of that will be an engineering solution and a process solution that we develop with the support of the Ontario government in order to achieve that. And hopefully that makes us more competitive to win subsequent projects down the line.
Now, you're a founding member of the Ontario Marine Council. St. Catharines is also a member of the council. The Marine Council launched its strategic plan. Tell us a little bit about what that plan looks like. How is it going to align with the work you're doing and the provincial marine strategy that we're trying to move forward?
So, I mean, there's a lot in that plan. A large portion of it is targeted to the commercial vessel operators like Algoma and McKeel and CSL. Excuse me. And then the ports, a lot of it is targeted toward the ports, specifically in reference to us, and this is probably the most exciting part of it, for me anyway, is that for the first time in the province's history, they have outlined, or they've developed a strategy that recognizes shipbuilding as a key part of the economy.
Yeah.
And so for us, that's a huge step forward in terms of recognizing, I guess, recognizing the shipbuilding industry is a significant piece, but I guess in a broader sense, people forget that Ontario is a maritime region.
Oh, yeah.
We have the busiest ports. We have some of the largest shipyards. We're home to the largest Canadian commercial operator in Algoma. But we're not viewed as such. And so the Ontario Marine Strategy is a recognition that we are a maritime a maritime region, and that the maritime economy needs to be viewed in that way, and in the context of it is a hugely significant part of the broader economy as a whole.
Well, and so that leads us, we're talking about the provincial government, but that leads us into the national shipbuilding strategy and how St. Catharines becomes a part of that and how Ontario Shipyards becomes a part of that. Why is that important for us to be a part of what that overall strategy looks like?
I think there's a number of reasons. I think first and foremost, from the city of St. Catharines' perspective, this is a generational, multi-billion-dollar opportunity.
Yeah.
The National Shipbuilding Strategy is the single largest procurement initiative that the federal government has ever undertaken. It's probably going to wind up upwards of $100 billion.
Yeah.
So for Ontario and St. Catharines and Hamilton and Thunder Bay to not be a part of that is a huge missed opportunity for us as a province. In terms of our nation, you just look at the geopolitical landscape right now.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff in the news right now about how even recent polls have shown that 65% of Canadians want the federal government to at least meet the 2% threshold that our NATO commitments require.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet. So from actually, and I just read an article today that the state of readiness of the Canadian Armed Forces is atrociously low.
Yeah.
We're not ready to deploy.
Only 56% of the
Something
the
like
Canadian
that. I was just
military,
reading it before I came here. So the fact that we have 3 large shipbuilding, ship repair facilities that are underutilized and are not part of the National Shipbuilding Strategy should be a focus of the federal government.
Yeah.
Because they have a problem and we have the assets to help them. So bring us into that strategy so that we can not only leverage the shipyard capacity, but the broader economic might of Ontario.
I always appreciate solutions-based companies. Ted, thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. We'll be right back after this. St. Catharines, welcome back to this episode of Talk STC. We are continuing our theme related to the Welland Canal. You may have noticed a bit of a location change. We are here right after the Top Hat ceremony in St. Catharines at Lock 3 as we get ready to get into the 66th season of navigation on the Welland Canal. And because of that, we decided let's go to the source, to the people that make that happen. My next guest is Greg Rule, the president and CEO of Algoma Central Corporation. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, a little bit of a bio first. Greg joined Algoma. You were there November of 2015 as the Senior Vice President Technical. Then you became the Chief Operating Officer in 2017, and then 2019 into your current role now. Over 30 years of experience in the transportation industry, including over 25 years in marine transportation. And before Algoma in 2015, you were the managing director of the marine division of Canadian National Railway Company in Duluth, Minnesota. Right. I will say, I think that's fantastic. You know, a lot of residents in St. Catharines, we use the bridges as an excuse for why we can't get from point A to point B. So you're involved in that delay now, and before with CN and the rail traffic sometimes in the West End as well. But degreed mechanical engineer from Grove City College with a master's of business administration from the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome.
Yep. Thank you.
Now, before we get into things, maybe touch on the engineering journey. As you know, I'm an engineer, although I always joke, mining engineer, we blow things up, everybody else builds them. But tell me a little bit about that journey on the way to Algoma.
Hey, engineering is a great kind of foundational, for me, you can either become an engineer and then do great things in engineering, or for me it was a great foundation for just understanding, especially a capital intensive business like Algoma, where you have massive ships, massive amounts of capital being deployed. So then moving on to the business of making those assets become sustainable and operate properly, and I think it's a great combination. So I'd recommend it to anyone. Engineering plus some business is a great combination.
That's phenomenal. So did you find the transition relatively smooth? You did the MBA as well, just to make that path a little bit easier, but it was a smooth transition?
It was for me, and I don't think I was that good of an engineer. So this was a better path for me.
I love it. I love it. I try to tell people, like I said, mining engineering, we blow stuff up. If you want me to calculate a velocity of detonation, I can do it. But maybe teaching physics and then getting into politics was the right path for me too. So 125 years. And that's a phenomenal accomplishment for any business. But I've got to think in the marine industry, like this is an industry, you know, ups and downs. Profitability is great some years. There's no profitability. You're in the red other years. How's Algoma been able to do that?
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, marine industry is we're a derived demand, right? So we do what the economy or what our customer base needs us to do. So we don't control the what's coming at us, so to speak. So you have to set up the company to be sustainable, obviously with a modern view of sustainability, which is environmentally responsible and sustainable employment, but also sustainable from a profitability standpoint. You're not going to be around. So you have to kind of diversify, but not over-diversify, focus on what you're good at. And I think Algoma's done that for nearly 70 years of uninterrupted profitability, some good years, some very good years, and all sorts of marginal years, but we've actually turned a paper profit every year in nearly 70 years straight.
Well, and I think that's one of the stats when it got thrown out during the ceremony today. Like that was one of the things that really I keyed in on. You know, there are times ups and downs in the economy, major recessions. The last 20 years, especially, we've seen major recessions. The economy has taken steps backwards all the time, but Algoma has been there and still been able to do what they do it well, and support the rest of the economy while turning a profit.
Think of the crisis, the changes in the economy. Think about all the coal that was moving for power generation. That was ships worth of business. Think of grain that was going to Russia before Russia started sending grain to the rest of the world, and grain embargoes back in the day, and then COVID, changes in manufacturing and all the steel that was required and the iron ore for that to support that manufacturing. It's an amazing testimony, like you said, for any business to be 125 years old, but for a marine business, it's very rare, and we're really proud of it.
So are there any pivotal moments that you can think of in the history of the company that you think have sort of shaped the identity and contributed to the fact you've been able to stick around?
I think Algoma's changed, right? We started out as as a railroad years and years ago. At the beginning, we say the bear was hanging onto the side of a locomotive at first for the first few years, and then the bear moved to the side of ships, and then those ships changed. So we started as bulkers, and then as self-unloaders became the answer to the kind of the economic challenge of being able to go to more and more ports. We've served over 90 ports in the past few years around the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. These are docks and ports, and you can't do that unless you have a self-unloading boom, so you can unload yourself. And then we moved on to tankers to move liquid products, and now we're moving powdered cement through pneumatic. It's in essence it's a pneumatic self-unloader. So we've advanced and then grown internationally, which also gives you resilience when things are up or down depending on the commodity. Salt is a little down right now. It hasn't been it hasn't been snowy or cold and miserable enough for the last few years. We need some more miserable weather the next couple winters. But other things are solid, grain solid, and our international businesses and our tanker businesses are solid. So that what helps us weather those storms.
Please understand, I say this with all due respect. I'm okay if we don't have miserable
No,
winters.
no,
That's
you're
my
not.
bottom line.
You're
right
on
there.
our side. You should be on our
I'm
side.
on your side, Greg. I know, but you diversified so well. I don't feel that bad on the
okay,
salt side.
all right.
So right now, in this moment in Algoma's history, you've got 17 vessels under construction. What's the vision for the future growth and the sustainability? I mean, I know Algoma has done such an incredible job over the last couple of decades investing in environmental technologies that are going to green this fleet, are going to green the industry in general. Talk a little bit about what that future growth looks like.
Yeah, so we're starting to move. You know, we have Equinox class vessels that we started building nearly 10 years ago. Great advancements, the absolute best technology available at the time, and we're actually still building the last one. The second last one is on its way across the Pacific right now. So these are still the best available greenhouse gas reduction technologies, but now we probably need to take a break for a few years, and so our next set of orders are, you know, methanol ready, shore power ready, and also kind of flexible so that they can be converted down the road to future fuels. Even biofuels, you know, we could use someday even in the current fleet. So we've got some flexibility moving forward, but hey, I'm going to admit it's a tough time because we don't know what the answer is yet. And like last time, we have to deploy a lot of capital. And in the Great Lakes, those are bespoke ships, fit perfectly in the locks, and they're worth almost nothing anywhere else in the world. So if we make a bad bet, we could be in trouble as a company. So we're treading lightly, but we've also made a lot of investments in the current fleet.
And this is one of the things, you know, I always laugh. Like when I came into this role, I don't think I realized how important the marine industry is to St. Catharines and Niagara and how much time I'd spend on it. But, you know, one of the things key messages I'm trying to get across to different levels of government, different governments, binational organizations, like recognize those investments that have been made, because ultimately the goal is to make this the greenest form of transportation. And I think Algoma's been a leader over the last couple of decades in making that happen. We need to make sure that that's recognized so that you know, some future government doesn't try to come in and ignore the investments that have been made. So a lot of kudos to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the season's commencing, the 66th season of the St. Lawrence Seaway. How's the season look?
Well, I mentioned salt is a bit down. We're pretty cautiously optimistic about grain for this season. We've been through a couple big droughts at least 2 years ago, and so grain looks good. Manufacturing and kind of construction products like stone, cement, I would say they're solid. So all in all, I would say it's going to be a fine season. I'd like to say it's going to be a great season. I don't know about great, but I don't think it's going to be a horrible season either. And so we're right now fitting out all our domestic fleet except for 3 ships, which is almost 30 ships minus 3. And those 3 we think will come out as the kind of the business develops here in the next few months.
So future challenges, opportunities. You talked a little bit, you know, taking a step back and treading cautiously. For your company and for the industry in general, what do those challenges and opportunities look like?
Yeah. So we're continuing to look at kind of growing our joint ventures and our domestic businesses here. I mean, our heart is in Canada, but we can only get so big here. So we will grow with the economy and we will grow with the communities that we serve. But internationally, we look for niche, short sea shipping, shipping that's competing with kind of trucks or rail or in a niche geography, a niche kind of ship, a little more expensive ship sometimes that we are willing to go into where a big commoditized shipping company won't. We think that's the answer for our future growth. But we're not gunslingers at Algoma. We've been around 125 years and we're not going to blow that now. So we are not motivated by growth alone. We're motivated by sustainable jobs, sustainable profitability, sustainable environmental impact, and then if we can grow along the way, great. But we have a very supportive board of directors and shareholders that don't want us to grow for the sake of growth. So I would call us a value stock, not a growth stock.
I would agree wholeheartedly with that. last thing. So after the ceremony was done today, we went out, we were taking pictures, and a couple of the crew on the Sioux, who was in the lock for the ceremony today, came out, and I watched you having some interaction there. How great is that? You know, you're the CEO of a massive international company. How great is that to then be able to, you know, take a couple minutes and just have that conversation with the folks that are making the company run? Yeah,
you're hitting me in the heart there, but we have nearly 2,000 employees, and so I can't say I know every one of them, but I try to have relationship and interaction with as many as I can. And these are real people that have a tough job. They leave their families for lengths of time, you know, sometimes a month at a time, sometimes 6 weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time. Yeah. And these are folks that when I was huddled in my home during COVID, they were on the public transportation we were all figuring out the time, getting onto ships and servicing not just our company, but you know, the society and the economy. So we have great employees, and we really want to honor and respect them, because you know, there's two things in the shipping business. It's not all people, because there's a ton of money that goes into the capital intensiveness, but it's not all money, because those ships are worth nothing unless you have great people that are stewards of the assets. So.
Well, I'll tell you, it was fantastic to see that interaction. They seem to really appreciate you, and you seem to really appreciate them.
Thanks.
And you know, from St. Catharines' perspective, we appreciate Algoma because you've been a huge part of this community for so long. Yeah. So I will say it again, Greg. Thank you, and congratulations on 125 years. We're looking forward to another 125. As we said today, I like the fact that we can throw a baseball from one another's office and hit the other one. So. Appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having us. We're really proud, and it makes us even more proud to know that the community is excited about what we're doing.
Excellent. St. Catharines will be back right after this. St. Catharines, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Talk STC. I want to thank my friends at formerly Heddle and now Ontario Shipyards and Ted Kirkpatrick. I want to thank Greg Rule from Algoma Central Corporation, and I congratulate them again on their 125th anniversary. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Talk STC.